What's going on, guys? What's happening? YouTube, good morning. You guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels. We got another millennial story for you guys today. I know we talk about this a lot. Whenever there's kind of a slow news cycle, the media loves to run these stories about how broke millennials are, how millennials all hate their home purchases or are upset with their career decisions. So we must be in another slow news cycle. We got this article, The Millennials Who Can't Afford for the Pandemic to End. And I thought this was an interesting article. Here's what I found to be really interesting about this. Typically, when you read these opinion pieces or lifestyle pieces about people who are struggling due to the pandemic, it's people that you want to feel sorry for, right? It's the bar owner who had the government shut down his business, and due to no fault of his own, he's unable to make a living, right? It's the guy who works as a waiter during the day and a bartender at night to support his family, and both his income sources were taken away. Meanwhile, Home Depot and Lowe's are packing people in there, but we got to shut down the bars and restaurants and small businesses. But we have these really sympathetic characters in these articles. And what's kind of different about this article, they seem to have picked I think they cover the story of 3 or 4 different people, and nobody in this article is very sympathetic. I think one person covered in this article is a quote unquote aspiring comedian in New York City who works as a part-time babysitter. And basically the article is talking about how once eviction moratoriums are lifted, once the enhanced unemployment goes away in September, people are going to be struggling. And well, I do think there's probably some people out there who actually need this money and through no fault of their own have been affected by this. The people in this story here, kind of made poor lifestyle decisions, and it's kind of hard to feel sorry for them. So again, we got this one woman who she's an aspiring comedian and part-time babysitter living in New York City. Wake up call, but pandemic or no pandemic, if you expect to get by in one of the most expensive cities in the world, well, being a part-time babysitter, probably not going to work out. I think there's 2 other individuals in this story who wound up intentionally losing their jobs to collect unemployment. I was recently watching an episode of Valuetainment. I don't know if you guys ever watch Patrick Bet-David's Valuetainment. I would say their kind of views tend to be either more libertarian or maybe even conservative. And generally speaking, I think kind of the conservative attitude is like, you should try to work hard and you shouldn't rely on the government. And one of the guys on Valuetainment, I forget his name, he's one of the younger guys on the show, kind of big burly guy, really loud and boisterous, used to be a college baseball player. If any of you guys watch Valuetainment, you probably know the dude I'm talking about. I can't remember his name. But he kind of said, you're kind of if you would go to work 40 hours a week as opposed to getting paid more to stay at home, you're kind of a sucker. And he said this idea that, you should do the right thing and take the higher road and everything else. He says, if you're playing a game and the rules of the game have changed and you're going to continue playing by the old rules and losing, that doesn't make you honorable. It kind of makes you a sucker. And he kind of said, the government has been giving away trillions of dollars to their friends, their cronies, large corporations. And you as a little guy, if it benefits you to take the money instead of work, get your cake, get your money, get that government cheese. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But yeah, this story, basically covers some of the most unsympathetic millennials in regards to not wanting the pandemic to end. I saw kind of a scary survey today. It was something like 40% of Brits want international travel to halt, even for the vaccinated. Don't want bars and nightclubs to open up. Want masks indefinitely. Now, whether this is true or this is kind of the media trying to push a narrative, we don't really know. But let's hop into this article. I found this one to be pretty interesting. So this one comes to us from the Daily News, and it's titled "The Millennials Who Can't Afford the End of the Pandemic." The Labor Department jobs report for May 2021 showed the national unemployment rate at 5.8%, a slight decrease from previous months, but still well over prior levels to the pandemic. In New York State, unemployment is at 8.2%, with roughly 789,000 people without work. That's the second highest rate in the country. It doesn't surprise me, as many millennials I've encountered in the city are deciding to ride out Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, or PUA, Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation, FPUC, and Unemployment Insurance, UI, in fear of returning to jobs that pay $15 per hour. It's kind of interesting. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens come here in fall. We keep hearing about how there's like 11 million unfilled jobs out there. Obviously, most of these jobs are in, kind of lower paying sectors, bartenders, waitresses, warehouse workers, etc. And a lot of people aren't wanting to go back to these jobs, and it kind of makes you wonder, like, how can people afford not to have money coming in, especially people who were working these lower wage jobs who you would think probably don't have a ton of money in savings, and in large part it's because of the enhanced unemployment. But I had a buddy telling me the other day he had a craving for Taco Bell. Why anybody has a craving for Taco Bell, I don't know. But he had a craving for Taco Bell, so he went out to get Taco Bell. The first Taco Bell he went to, they were closed. They had a sign on the window or on the drive-through that said, we're short-staffed. We don't have enough staff. For the foreseeable future, we'll be closing at 6 p.m. So he continued on. He went to two more Taco Bells, and all in all, went to three Taco Bells. None of these Taco Bells were open after 6 p.m. One thing that kind of blew my mind, does anybody go to Taco Bell for lunch? Like, to me, Taco Bell seems like either like I'm really lazy and I just need some dinner on my way home from work because I'm exhausted, or I'm really high at 10 o'clock at night, or I'm really drunk at 2 o'clock in the morning. But I just don't, if you're going to pick what hours you're open, I don't see like, noon to 6 being the biggest hours for Taco Bell. But yeah, his Taco Bell now and for the foreseeable future isn't open because there's nobody to staff it. And we see a lot of bars, restaurants, etc., facing these problems. Almost every restaurant I've been to recently has had help wanted signs out. So it'll be interesting to see come September if people wind up going back into these jobs or not. I worked three jobs to pay my bills, and I wasn't able to start saving until unemployment kicked in during the pandemic, says Franny Lopez, 24, an unemployed actor currently working part-time as a babysitter in Williamsburg. Okay, so I guess the other person was a comedian. This person's a part-time babysitter and aspiring actor. Millennials feel that businesses need to pay wages that are higher than state and federal unemployment benefits in order to justify going back to work and living in New York City. And here's kind of another thing, right? Like, a lot of people seem to have this idea that everybody is entitled to live in some of the most desirable areas in the country. Now, personally, I don't think there's nothing really desirable about New York, but a lot of people have this idea that like everybody should be able to live in San Diego or Southern California, or everybody should be able to live in New York. And the reality is, these desirable areas only have so much space. There's only so much land. There's only so much real estate. And when something's desirable, more people are going to want it, and more people are going to want to live there. That's going to raise the price. And unless you work hard and earn a lot of money, you might not be able to live in these areas. You could move out to Iowa and buy a house cash for $30,000 or $40,000, but Iowa isn't as desirable as New York City or Southern California. But it's kind of interesting to me that people think that they are kind of entitled to chase their dream as an actor or comedian, only work part-time as a babysitter, and then expect to live in one of the most expensive cities in the country. The UI system was created in 1935 under the Social Security Act. It is designed to provide out-of-work Americans with basic wages to survive. 85 years later, at least some young professionals report that they are doing better financially on unemployment benefits than through work. That's partly because from April 5th to July 26, 2020, unemployed New Yorkers were eligible for an added $600 per week FPUC established by the Coronavirus Aid Relief Economic Security Act, or the CARES Act. Additionally, the bill broadened eligibility benefits for gig contractors, self-employed workers, and freelancers until Labor Day. I made a plan to get laid off from this sales job I had at the beginning of the pandemic so I could qualify for unemployment when they were paying people over $1,000 a week, says Amanda L., 24, a Bushwick-based comedian. That's almost double the wages of a full-time minimum wage job. In 2021, FPUC program has been reduced by $300 per week, but still some report that they are doing better financially without a salary. With unemployment, I'm making marginally more take-home pay versus working full-time in an office job, Mike T., 28, a Queens-based graphic designer, told me. And here's what's kind of a shame, right? Like, there's definitely people in life who, through no fault of their own, had bad parents, didn't go to good schools, didn't get an education, don't have marketable skills. But here's a guy who's a graphic designer. He has a marketable skill that he could either work for somebody else or freelance for himself, and he's just decided to kind of kick back and collect his unemployment. In a speech last month, President Biden emphasized the importance of removing UI benefits from workers who refuse suitable jobs. Meantime, in at least 24 states with Republican governors are opting to halt PUA, FPUC, and Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation, a benefits program for long-term unemployed, before their planned early cutoff in September. And here's another interesting thing. I heard a stat recently that I believe it was 47% of people invested their stimulus checks into either the stock market or crypto. Now, well, I think it's good that we do have a safety net to help the most vulnerable people in society. There's no such thing as free money. We're creating insane inflation, and eventually this money is going to have to be paid back either by us, our kids, or our grandkids. We're paying more in interest on our debt, right? Like there's no such thing as a free lunch. This money's going to have to come from somewhere. And when 47% of people, almost half of people, are investing their stimulus checks in speculative investments like Dogecoin, or GameStop, or Nokia, that kind of tells you that at least half the people that we're giving these stimulus checks and unemployment to probably don't need the money. So why are we giving it all away? At least some New York millennials wanting to survive in a city and enjoy a more normal summer are still asking themselves why go back to work yet. Deanna Cohen, the deputy director for the New York State Department of Labor, says that unemployed New Yorkers are required to search for work. If a New Yorker receiving unemployment does not document their job hunt and submit proof if asked, they can lose benefits and have to back pay. It is unclear whether this is likely, though, because the state is often behind on payments and inundated with claims. Until PUA and UI run out, New Yorkers on these programs have a choice. They don't have to risk their lives for minimum wage, says one candidate for city council. Michael Hollingsworth, who believes the living wage in New York City should be $25 per hour with yearly increases reflecting inflation. Hollingsworth views millennials' usage of unemployment as part of an organized revolution to democratize labor against wage slavery. It's good that working people have some modest savings for the first time in a long time and can be a little bit pickier about what jobs pay enough and what jobs are safe enough. And unfortunately, rather than using this time to, it sucks for anyone who's ever lived check to check, and I have as well. It sucks if you lose a job having to run out and get the first job that you can just because you're going to have a 2 or 3 week gap in pay. And you kind of just got to get something. Like right now, people are in a situation where they can really kind of be picky and hunt for a good job. But what it seems like is going to wind up happening is everybody's going to wait until the last minute till unemployment runs out in September, and then everybody's going to be scrambling, and they're going to wind up having to take the first job that they come across. Guido Menzio, an economics professor at NYU, feels that staying on unemployment potentially weakens the opportunity to accumulate career experience. He points out that staying at a job, on the other hand, precludes potentially earning higher wages at another job, a worker's catch-22 of sorts. Regardless, for many New Yorkers, staying on unemployment is now a matter of survival. Workers are demanding jobs that can at least cover their utility, transportation, clothing, healthcare, and food costs. Until the federal government returns to pre-pandemic policies, extended unemployment benefits provide a respite from the hustle of work life. Even though jobs are plentiful and businesses would like to hire faster, after a year off the wheel, a number of millennial New Yorkers want and deserve more. Many are exhausted by service industry jobs because they invested time and money in college educations. In reality, the end of the pandemic will mean an end to benefits, marking a return to low-wage work and scarcely scraping by for many New Yorkers' younger generation, and they're not ready yet. So that's the end of this article. I also saw an interesting stat the other day. I think it was something like nearly half of people who previously worked in restaurants and bars in the service industry said they don't want to go back, and will pay was a part of it. Most people, it kind of sucks working restaurant and bar jobs, right? Like you're working a lot of nights and weekends. You're working a lot of holidays. Oftentimes you don't have consistent hours. And so they did this survey, and the people who reported not wanting to go back to these jobs, well, pay was a big factor. Most of these people wanted to seek out something where they could work remotely. They wanted, steadier hours. They wanted better benefits. So it'll be interesting to see if people go back into the restaurant industry, what happens in September. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. If you guys enjoyed this article, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button below and drop a comment. Let me know what you guys think about this story and what things are going to look like for bars and restaurants come September. That's all, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next video.